Aaron Rodgers is officially back, and that means that everybody in the Jets should see their dynasty value increase. We'll explain why in this episode of the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Madjuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Kate Madjuk. You can follow her on Twitter at Kate Madjuk. Just want to let you guys know, Matt Williamson, he'll be on the show tomorrow for a Twitter Thursday. We had some big news we wanted to talk about. We've got OTAs going on across the league right now, players on the field in action, and that includes Aaron Rodgers, who is officially back from his Achilles injury, doing everything with the Jets. How excited does that make you about everybody in this Jets roster moving forward?
I am super excited, and I don't want to get it twisted. We are not very excited for Aaron Rodgers specifically himself. I'm happy that he's back on the field. You know, right now being drafted on average is the QB 27 in dynasty startup leagues. I think it should probably stay around there. Like, we don't necessarily know that he's going to come back to prior form, right? Like, out of all of the last 5 seasons that he's played a full season, took a big drop in 2022. So kind of hard to assess what we're actually going to get out of him once he hits the field here for the Jets. But what I do want to acknowledge is that the scoring opportunities are going to be so much more plentiful for these wide receivers. We talked a little bit about Garrett Wilson, I think on one of our shows last week. And I talked about how safe the floor is for a guy with, back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, despite the fact that, like, he's catching balls from quarterbacks who aren't necessarily Aaron Rodgers quality quarterbacks. You have Breece Hall, who, we know he's got the speed dynamic. He's another year removed from the torn ACL. And then there's the fact that, like, I think the position here for wide receiver 2 is totally wide open. You have Allen Lazard, who, like, say what you want, but, like, kind of a pretty consistent wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 when he last played with Aaron Rodgers. This is an intriguing offense, and seeing Aaron Rodgers back in the mix, you've got to be pretty amped for it.
Yeah, I'm not really excited about Aaron Rodgers, the fantasy quarterback, because even in his MVP seasons, he wasn't giving us elite production, right? And I got to assume at this stage of his career, like, if he ends up being like a low-end QB1, you're ecstatic. And again, what I care about is how he helps everybody else in this team. Let me ask you this, Kate. If I told you that Aaron Rodgers was going to play 16 games this season, let's say there's one game in there he misses, so 16 games, how many wide receivers just for this year alone would you rank ahead of Garrett Wilson?
Not many. I can tell you that much.
Let me give you some names.
CeeDee Lamb, maybe Amon-Ra St. Brown, just based on the trajectory of that offense. They have a favorable schedule with a ton of dome games this year. That might be the end of the list for me.
And to me, it's Justin Jefferson and CeeDee Lamb. And actually, let me rephrase that. If I knew that Aaron Rodgers was playing 16 games, I think I would take Garrett Wilson this year over Justin Jefferson because of the quarterback uncertainty. Because I think there's a good chance, Kate, that Garrett Wilson leads the NFL in targets. Those targets are going to be high quality coming from Aaron Rodgers, which means likely going to lead the NFL in catches, could lead the NFL in yards. And what we've seen in the past is usually the number one target for Aaron Rodgers is among the leaders in touchdowns, right?
Yep.
Why not? And that's why there's so much value here. Right now, Garrett Wilson being drafted as wide receiver 8. You mentioned it. He's not the only player that's going to have a higher ceiling if Aaron Rodgers is healthy. Breece Hall could realistically finish as the RB1. Mike Williams, I mean, well, who knows how long he could stay healthy, but every week that Mike Williams is healthy is going to be a flexible receiver. And then we have Malachi Corley, who I like quite a bit. I think he becomes a flex play every week. This is big news that Aaron Rodgers is back, and it looks like he's pretty healthy.
I'm going to be honest. I continue to kind of just push Mike Williams out of the back of my mind. And maybe this is me having kind of like some PTSD here, having put my stock in Mike Williams over and over and over again. Do you know, Marcus, is he participating in OTAs in any capacity at this point, or is he still fully rehabbing? I think that could be kind of a difference maker in this offense because, like, if Malachi Corley is getting all of these reps, obviously he's going to play a different archetype of receiver role in this offense than Mike Williams. But like both of these players are new to the offense, right? So I want the guy that's getting the bulk of the reps at this point. Malachi Corley, I know it's like hashtag clip season on Twitter where we get all the hype videos and stuff, but
The best. It's the awesome. It's so great.
it is. It's quality content. And I do think that, again, from a health perspective, Malachi Corley kind of has an edge here for me. We know all you have to do is get the ball in his hands and he's gone. Like, who do you want as the wide receiver two in this team? Let's say just based on current cost.
Oh, not even close. It's Malachi Corley, not even close. We should update. You asked about Mike Williams' health. He's still not cleared for contact, so he's not doing anything at OTAs. The Jets are hoping by the time that we get to training camp, he'll be cleared. We'll see. This is somebody
That could be crucial for Malachi Corley's development here in this offense.
Absolutely. And Nathaniel Hackett came out on Tuesday and said, hey, this is somebody that we need to make it a point to get 10 touches a game. I know that's a little bit of coach speak. And is it realistic that he's going to get 10 touches a game? No, it's not. But I do think he is going to be outside of Garrett Wilson and outside of Breece Hall. Could he be third in line in touches in this offense? I don't see why not. I think he's a perfect fit. I also want to say Aaron Rodgers has played with a player like this before who is kind of new to the wide receiver position, but dynamic with the football in his hands. That was Randall Cobb coming out of Kentucky a long time ago. And we got Malachi Corley coming out of Western Kentucky. I think they're pretty similar as players. So I wouldn't be surprised if Corley has a much, much bigger role than anybody anticipates this season.
Well, it was kind of fitting, Marcus, that he got put into this offense, drafted into this offense in particular, because in our pre-draft show where we broke down Malachi Corley as a prospect, Randall Cobb was your player comp. So the fact that, this is a player, an archetype, we'll say, that, Aaron Rodgers has already developed and developed that rapport and has kind of seen the trajectory of possibilities for this type of receiving option and this type of weapon. Yeah, like I continue to find myself enamored, but generally speaking, you've just got to be super excited for where he's at in the rehab process. And to hear that he's been a full go, like, at this point, wheels up, New York.
All right, let's talk about Rashee Rice, who has seen his dynasty stock fall like a rock. Oh man, I didn't mean to rhyme there, but I did anyways. It's okay. Where are we at with Rashee Rice now that we're into OTAs? We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Yahoo Finance. When it comes to your financial future, you think that you've done it all. You've saved, you've researched, you've invested all that you can. Now you need to take those investments to the next level by using what every financial great uses, and that's Yahoo Finance. For more than 25 years, Yahoo Finance has been the brand behind every great investor. Whether you're a seasoned investor or looking for that extra guidance, Yahoo Finance gives you all the tools and the data you need in one place. They are the #1 finance destination, producing a holistic look at the financial news cycle, including breaking news, original editorial perspective, analyst ratings, independent research, customizable charts, and so much more. With a community of over 90 million users each month, their real strength is helping you on your way to financial success. For comprehensive financial news and analysis, visit the brand behind every great investor, yahoofinance.com, the #1 financial destination, yahoofinance.com. That is yahoofinance.com. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Are you having to turn down the volume because of all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all that screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Kate, Rashee Rice is back in the news. This time it's for a good reason. According to Adam Schefter, the victim in a club brawl, is that what you want to call it?
Something like that.
Decided not to press charges, told the Kansas City police that he did not want to have anything further on here. So after a pretty rough offseason for Rashee Rice, this is a fairly significant win.
Fairly significant win. And we do have Rashee Rice participating in OTAs at full capacity. Now, obviously, the legal woes are not necessarily over for Rashee Rice. He still has to face the consequences of this driving incident that took place earlier in the offseason prior to the club incident. And yeah, way too many incidents. But I do want to point out that the fact that this one incident was dropped, it feels like the skies are opening up a little bit here for Rashee Rice. We know that, the Kansas City Chiefs drafted Xavier Worthy in the first round. We know that they signed Marquise Brown to a 1-year deal, but outside of maybe like a 4-game or so suspension, which is what I'm going to guess is like in the realm of possibilities here for Rashee Rice, I think we have to kind of imagine that like the impact overall in terms of long-term dynasty value for Rashee Rice, as long as he can get his butt together, is relatively minimal. And man, I hope like people are going to take advantage of the dip, because we just drafted in a dynasty startup together, and I grabbed Rashee Rice at the 909 in our dynasty startup, which, especially given this news, Marcus, that feels like a steal.
I just wanted to clear up something. This incident happened in Dallas and not Kansas City, so I just wanted to make that clear. I think the suspension is going to be maybe a little bit longer. I think like 6 games is probably what Rashee Rice is going to get. However, I think all that depends, because I also think there's a chance that Rashee Rice just doesn't get suspended this year at all. We know how the legal process or how long the legal process takes. The NFL might want to let everything play out before making a decision here. And that could be huge, because if you're in a startup draft right now, like we are, and you're drafting Rashee Rice and all of a sudden he's available week 1, that's massive, right? We talked about Rashee Rice earlier this offseason. You can go watch that video where I was wondering, could Rashee Rice potentially be a top 10 dynasty wide receiver after a fantastic rookie season, like 938 yards, 7 touchdowns, was really good in the playoffs. Like that's the trajectory he's on, or he was on. And now, Kate, he's being drafted as wide receiver 30 in the latest batch of ADP from Dynasty League Football. Feels like a massive steal.
Does this, and obviously, again, like I said, there's still some things to play out here. This story's far from over, but I am curious, like rate it 1 through 10. 1 being you're very uncomfortable with Rashee Rice in terms of long-term concerns for some of his off the field issues, versus 10 where you're not concerned at all. I might have done that in like
opposite. We'll do the opposite. Like 10.
Yeah.
I'm
I did that totally opposite, but you get what I'm saying. You're picking up what I'm putting down. How concerned are you? Grade your level of concern for Rashee Rice, because if your concern level is pretty low, I'm going to say that this is a peak buy low window.
I think it's like a 6.
Okay.
So here's my reasoning behind the traffic incident and the accident was very bad. Right now, luckily nobody was hurt worse than they were. No lives were lost. Everybody got out of that accident relatively okay. My concern is that even though there wasn't a police or there's not going to be charges from this assault in the club, right? That there's starting to be this pattern of behavior with Rashee Rice, where I feel like one more incident is probably going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back here, right? Like I feel like the Chiefs have been pretty lenient so far, letting him practice, saying they're going to let the legal process play out. Despite everything that's going on, if we have one more incident, it can be very minor too. I do wonder if the Chiefs will just decide to move on. So I think, assuming he can put everything else behind him, deal with this legal matter, get that resolved, and just go about playing football, we're going to be fine. I am a little bit worried that we're on some thin ice.
I think that's fair. Just want to review a couple of quick trades. Now, there haven't been any trades documented here in Dynasty League football since the news that these charges on the secondary incident won't be pursued. But over the past couple of weeks, there have been charges or trades involving Rashee Rice. I kind of want to get your feel. So, knowing what we know now, Rashee Rice were a 2025 second round pick.
I'd rather have Rice.
Okay. Rashee Rice or Najee Harris?
I'd rather have Rice.
Rashee Rice.
But hold on. But you know how much I hate Najee Harris, so that's fair.
Yeah, you're only marginally biased. It's okay.
Yeah.
Rashee Rice for Miles Sanders, the 212 and the 412 in this year's rookie drafts.
So Miles Sanders is basically nothing. So let's just cancel him out.
He's a throwaway.
So the last pick in the second round, and what's the last pick?
In the last pick in the fourth round.
Oh, I'd rather just have Rashee Rice.
See, like if these are kind of if this is the range for Rashee Rice, I still think, yeah, we're gonna proceed with Rashee Rice. And like you said, the suspension might not actually be something that's going to play in here in the 2023 or 2024 season. We still don't know much, right? But things look just a little bit better than they did before.
I will also say, I think fantasy managers and dynasty managers tend to overreact to suspensions. Like, let's say it's 6 games, like I suggested, and not 4, because I think 4 is a major win. 6 games, right? When we see players all the time get hurt in week 1 and miss the first 9-10 weeks of the season, and they're back to help you in your fantasy championships. I mean, look at Justin Jefferson last year. Obviously, I'm not suggesting that Rashee Rice is Justin Jefferson, but I almost treat it like an injury, right? Like, okay, 4 to 6 weeks, it's whatever. That's a high ankle sprain, and then you'll be back. And actually, it's better than a high ankle sprain because you're not rehabbing from an injury, right? So when he returns to the field, he'll be 100%. So as long as we're not talking about like a 10, 12 full season suspension, that part of it really doesn't bother me at all. I mean, obviously we're talking dynasty here, but I care about what Rashee Rice is going to do in the fantasy playoffs and then in 2025 and 2026 and beyond, right? So I can, if it only ends up being a 6-game suspension, I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I think full steam ahead for now. Obviously, we've still got a long ways to go before we really understand the trajectory of Rashee Rice and whether or not he's going to be able to pull it together. But boy, it is hard to pass up on that talent.
All right, let's talk about every single player in the NFL being in the best shape of their lives. We will get to that next. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. One of the common themes of OTAs is we hear players either bulking up, slimming down, or that they're in their best shape of their lives. I'm going to go through a couple players that we've heard this about over the last 2 days. I want your just general quick thoughts when I name the player. So Najee Harris down about 20 pounds already from last year.
I'm buying in. I'm all buying in. But you know what, guys, if you want to hear more about my thoughts on Najee Harris, go back, listen to our episode from a few days ago, because I talked about Najee Harris and the fact that like he's actually fallen behind Jaylen Warren in Dynasty Startup ADP. And I think it's kind of crazy. The one thing I think that fantasy managers and NFL fans and the like have missed from Najee Harris is juice, right? We know he has power, but where's the juice? I've said all along, if he can trim up and maybe lose a few pounds, might get a little bit more burst that's going to aid him in this outside zone scheme. Like I think that if the rumors are true, I think that this move for him in particular will change a lot regarding the way he plays football.
All right, let's run through a couple more. We'll be quick with these ones. Lamar Jackson has lost like 15 pounds. He's down to like 205, 210 right now. Do you care?
No, I don't care. He's already
Tua.
like the best quarterback in the league, Marcus.
Tua has lost 15 pounds. He was playing at about 230 pounds last year. He says he's trying to cut weight to be quicker in the pocket.
I don't care because he's not a fundamental rusher in any way. Like I don't think this is going to necessarily help him in terms of like upside, right? I
No.
think this is more of a if he's quicker in the pocket, great. That's better for his NFL premise, but he was already one of the most efficient passers in the league last year.
Christian Watson says that he is in the best shape of his life.
Until he pulls a hammy.
He says he's been working on it. A couple more. Patrick Mahomes actually said he's not in the best shape of his life. He said that dad life has been hard on his bod. So I saw a picture of him walking into the facility today, and all of the comments were body built by Coors Light. And I just laughed. I couldn't stop laughing.
Oh my God. Yeah. Actually, Patrick Mahomes has always had like kind of a dad bod. I think he pulls it off fairly well. No concern for me.
Any other players that we're missing talking about being in the best shape of their lives?
I don't think so, but I like the question mark, right? Like when you see these headlines, and again, this is OTA. So I think this is kind of the moral of the story here with OTA storylines is how much do you buy in, right? Like how much do you buy into the hype? Because this is generally kind of one of these more positive points in the off season where you hear a lot of the good. How do you weed through the nonsense, the coach speak? What's your approach to this in terms of Dynasty? Because there is inevitably going to be some OTA storyline, some best shape of his life that is going to entice some fantasy manager to make an offer for a player and grossly overpay. So how do we weed it out?
I even saw Bryce Young today. It said he bulked up. He gained like 15 pounds of muscle. I say for the most part, I just ignore all of it. Like it's mostly nonsense. And if you go back and you read about all the players last year who slimmed down and bulked up, like it really has no impact. Now, I will say there is one type of transition here that I do care about, and that is an older player who sheds a bunch of weight to kind of stay quicker, right? I think it was Adam Thielen a couple of years ago dropped some weight so he could be faster. I know Larry Fitzgerald did the same. I thought it was really interesting when Le'Veon Bell, he wasn't an older player, but in year 2 with the Steelers, he went from like 250 down to 225. If you're having like that significant of a weight drop, I'm at least interested because
so you are intrigued in Najee Harris's weight drop, just to be clear. Little
not
bit.
Really.
Get rid of your hatred for the Steelers.
No, it's just I just like Jalen Warren more. But
I think that it's worth noting, though. I think out of all those stories, out of all the hype, Najee Harris losing that weight, because I think that's something he's needed to do in order to get a little bit of that burst that we've been kind of missing from him.
Sure.
It's intriguing.
I think in general, the best way to go about this is just to ignore it all. If you just ignore it all and don't let it change your opinion or hype you up at all, I think you're generally going to be better off. There are some rare occasions, but I will say one of the things that I do care about, running backs that bulk up, I typically try to stay away from, because one of the reasons why they're bulking up is because they know they're going to get a lot of carries and they're trying to add some extra armor. That almost never works out because the NFL is so fast and so quick. That's one I do care about, but we don't see those very often. So you can basically ignore it.
That's absolutely fair. Now, we're going to keep talking OTAs and some good, some of the rumors we're hearing out of OTAs here later in the week. But I do think this is a good reminder of, like stay level headed. Enjoy the off-season videos, enjoy the hype comments. but take them for what they are. And a lot of the time it's entertainment and, not
Nonsense.
necessarily something you should be making big adjustments to your
No.
dynasty roster based on.
All right, that is it for today's show. On tomorrow's show, we're gonna have Matt Williamson on the podcast to answer your Twitter questions. So you can send them in to me at Marcus_Mosier, at Kate Majuk. Go download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Follow Kate on Twitter at Kate Majuk. I'm at Marcus_Mosier, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.